What is this? This looks kind of wild, right? Like a weird contraption with these wooden screws, a big board. Well, this is a bookbinding tool and it's called a sewing frame. Hi, I'm Linn and this is the Darbin Orvar channel where we play and build and experiment with all sorts of fun things in the shop. This video is part of a bookbinding series. It's all about making these classic tools and using them to make books. Of course, this particular one relates to sewing a book together. So what is this? It's a tool that enables you to bind books together using a cord or tape, which is not something that's done in modern bookbinding. Let's go over the parts of this unit, shall we? First of all, we have a board at the bottom. We have two wooden screws. We have threads in the boards, so the screws can screw in. We have nuts with threads that can screw up or down, and resting on the nuts, we have a paddle. There's a groove in the paddle and a groove in the board. Actually, there are two grooves in the board, so you can secure the rope in a different way if you want to, but you really only need one. And basically you secure rope or tape taut and sew your signatures together. Okay, let's start with making the board. Since we have a CNC, we're using that, first of all, to cut out feet at the bottom. But you don't need a CNC machine to do this project. You can secure feet to it in other ways and use a router to create the grooves. But look, isn't it absolutely neat to see the machine remove material, and there we have feet coming out of the board. I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. I love it. These holes here, this is where the wooden screws will go. But before threading the threads, we need holes, right? And just testing to make sure that this is the right size. And now the screws aren't going all the way through. So checking the depth right here. And turns out we need the hole to be a little bit deeper. And a little routing to soften up all the edges. And here, cutting a little detail, these pockets, you can fit your hands underneath and move the frame a little easier. It's one of those small little accents like that which are really nice to do on the CNC. Of course, it's not a necessary thing, but it's just a nice detail. And time for finish. This is some oil-based armor seal. This is the wood here is white oak, and I think that oil-based varnish really goes well with like the classic nature of this project. And next up here is the paddle, or whatever you want to call the thing that's resting on the nuts on the wooden screw. So preparing the board and then cutting out the shape on the CNC, but you know, you could also use a bandsaw or a jigsaw. There are two holes. This is going over the screws, and the holes are not going to be threaded, so they need to just be a little bit larger than the screws so they can move up and down easily. Now let's talk about screws for a second. We need two screws for this board, and we're going to be making our own wooden screws and nuts using this 1.5-inch tap and die set. And I'll put links to any of these products in the description. Also, I just want to take a moment and say thanks to our patrons for supporting the channel. If you're the kind person that appreciates this kind of diverse content, going into old-fashioned bookbinding one day and working on a teardrop the next day, then we can really use your support. There's links in the description below. The key to threading screws and nuts is to soak the wood in oil beforehand, and also to apply some mineral oil wax polish to limit the amount of tear out. Personally, I can't get enough of wooden screws. Sure, they're not as efficient or maybe practical as metal ones, but they are gorgeous, aren't they? And so classic. I just love them. Now, once we have the screws, we need to thread the holes in the board using the same set. Again, using some mineral oil wax polish, and this is one of our tins that we sell in the shop. Works great for this. And here you can see we used a chisel to clean the edges up a little bit on the second hole, just to avoid tear out, because it happens quite easily. And here you can basically see the screws in the board with the nuts and the paddle, and you can easily bring the paddle up or down simply by turning the nuts, so it's quite neat. And a little finish on the paddle and some more on the board. Now for a final finish, we're using some of the Darbin Orvar tung oil wax polish, also available in the shop. Actually, we just made a whole new batch, so it's all stocked up if you've been meaning to pick up a tin. I'm not trimming the screws, and we don't need them that long. Then cutting a groove in the paddle where we'll have some adjustable rings. Now let's take a look at how you actually use this. There are, of course, many ways to bind a book together. This tool is used when you're utilizing cord or tape to sew your signatures or bundles of folded pages together. So here you secure the rope, which will go into the book spine, using metal keys on one end and the paddle on the other end. This footage is actually before we added the adjustable rings. The trick is to get the cord pretty taut and even. Then you sew your signatures around the cord, and then you add the next one, repeat, and the next one, etc. until you've sewed all your signatures together and essentially the cord is holding all the paper together and the stitches are around it. When you're done, you have all this cord coming out on both sides, which gives you the opportunity to secure that cord inside the covers of the book. This construction is really strong because the pages of the book are actually attached to the covers completely, whereas in modern books, the covers are just held on by some glued paper, so this is a very different build. I'm going to show you guys these keys. These are brass keys bought at a specialty bookbinding place. And basically what you do is you bring the cord through and then you just kind of tie this together, and that way it can go through here and it's held in place. You can also use these H keys here. These are used for the band. You want to tie the band to these. Kind of a similar idea. It's slightly different when you sew the book together, but here's this nice linen band. And these are the tools that you use with the sewing frame. Of course, you could make your own keys in wood, or the point is to hold this cord or the string in place. Now I just want to show how the adjustable rings work. When you're attaching rope or cord, you can obviously raise or lower the bar to tighten or loosen them. But what if you want to tighten individual cords, like one's tighter than the other? Well, that's when this is useful. So you can tighten one but not the other, and you can get them all even. Anyway, I hope you found this interesting. This is part of our bookbinding series where we go over making these various classic old-fashioned tools to do bookbinding. I'll put some links in the description below to previous videos about tools. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you soon. Bye!